Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas.
No.
Sorry, Common Sense here. It's too many shows. Sorry.
Also, do you have to put
I'm moving it. I just need.
Christ on a cracker?
I can't click all the things at once.
You don't have to start with
very
the comments
demanding.
on my face.
Everyone's demanded to have their comments on your face. That's been part of the.
Yeah, well, they can suck it. Stop putting comments on my effing face.
Listen, everybody, could you stop putting comments on her face? All right, it's the last time we're gonna tell you.
This is typical male behavior, trying to blame everybody else for some shit that you did. Okay.
Don't make it about all men. It's just me who's shitty. All right. So on that note, we're coming in hot. Hello, everybody. I'm Lee Camp, joined by the always amazing Eleanor Goldfield. And we got loads of topic. Eleanor has to run at 3:30 or whatever, the half hour, depending on where you're watching. So therefore, we've got to get through a lot of topics quickly. I am going to be here for the full hour. I'm going to start Unredacted tonight at 3:45. We'll start playing that, but basically, anyway.
Now you know what's going on this entire hour.
It's good to give them the play-by-play. Give them the rundown.
It's like a playbill that you get at the theater.
Exactly. That's why they give you the playbill. Okay, so we're going to start with Israeli forces spraying an unknown chemical on Lebanon, because they have basically learned that they are accountable to zero laws. So why not just go for the ethnic cleansing genocide, the bingo card? Why not fill the bingo card?
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you waiting for me?
Go for
it. So basically, and I want to contextualize this by saying that this isn't the first time that Israel's done this. So yes, they are realizing now that they are really accountable to no one, but they've also done this. They've sprayed unknown chemical agents across the area back in 2019 and probably before that as well. But this was this past Monday. The UN interim force in Lebanon has warned of serious health and environmental risks after Israeli forces dispersed a, quote, unknown chemical substance over areas near the Blue Line in southern Lebanon, which forced the suspension of peacekeeping operations for several hours. That's the UN demarcated line marking Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon in 2000. And they could... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, they claim it's an herbicide, but as you'll recall with Agent Orange, that was an herbicide too. So I'm sure there's no other long-term harm done by an herbicide.
And of course, the UN also then again pointed out that this is not the first time that this has happened, and they urged Israel to stop, which I'm sure will have a lot of great effect, urging Israel to stop.
Israel is very sensitive to when other people want them to stop something or behave differently. They just don't. They don't. You know what it is? They don't want to step on any toes out there in the international community.
And of course, this, like, let's say that it's an herbicide, which is something that they've done in Gaza as well. The whole point is to make it impossible for people to grow food to survive. And this is also a tactic that Israel has used a lot for decades. This is not anything new. And this is something that they've done in, like I said, Gaza, Lebanon, other parts of Palestine, making it so that they can't survive and have to leave. It's part of the ethnic cleansing to commit this kind of ecocide where people can no longer live on the land, from the land, with the land.
And I cover in this week's Unredacted Tonight, which I'll be playing later in the show, I cover the fact that the West Bank, this part of Israel's tactic in the West Bank as well. I don't know if they've done it with dropping the chemicals from the sky like this, but they've killed tens of thousands of olive trees. They legit go in and burn them and dump chemicals on them, etc., in order to annihilate the ability of people to, like you said, live.
And again, this is part of let's call it a package of tactics. The UN also points out that these strikes are a part of a wider campaign that has repeatedly targeted reconstruction efforts in southern Lebanon, targeting rebuilding work and preventing displaced residents from returning to their homes in southern Lebanon. So that's a hell of a ceasefire too. I know it's not anything that really makes the news because, hell, Gaza barely makes the news anymore, but there's supposedly a ceasefire with Lebanon, and Israel keeps targeting it with a variety of things from chemical agents to actual fire that would suggest that the ceasefire is not a thing that is.
Israel has, during the ceasefire with Lebanon, Israel has bombed them. It's either hundreds or thousands of times. I can't remember, but it's not, it's basically, and they have not responded. So it's basically not a ceasefire for Israel. They get to keep bombing, but Lebanon has respected the ceasefire.
What is it? I think it was Rafat al-Arir, the Palestinian author, who said what a ceasefire typically means is that we cease and Israel continues to fire.
That seems to be the case. Now let's go to an update on the Rafah border crossing opening, which we've been saying, better to have, I guess, nothing open than, something open than nothing. But is Israel really going to open it, or are they simply going to open it to harass, torture, arrest people? Anyway, this is the update.
We covered this on last time, that basically, according to Israel, they will let 50 people through into Gaza and 150 people out of Gaza each day. That's, first of all, that does not an open crossing make. The second thing is that that's also bullshit. People have expected to wait for hours, but they've also reported being interrogated for hours, watching family members be beaten, having their belongings confiscated. One woman was evacuated to Egypt during the genocide to get medical care for her daughter. She was trying to come back into Gaza. They beat her daughter in front of her, and stole a lot of their belongings. They're very arbitrary about what they'll allow through. People have said that they've had, devices like phones and things confiscated just because, which is of course on brand, right? Like, none of this is shocking when put into the larger context of what Israel is. But again, people are talking about this crossing like it's open.
Yeah.
The way that you would think of any kind of crossing being open, right? Like, even if you're thinking of the US border when you come back from during a flight, you might expect to have to wait in line for some roided up dude to check your passport and ask you if you brought any cocaine into the country,
and you might expect them to take your tube of toothpaste. That might be expected.
Well, that's dangerous. But I don't think any of us would expect them to beat our children in front of us, or to steal most of our belongings, or to interrogate us, separate us from our family members and interrogate us for hours. But this is exactly what they're doing at this Rafah crossing. And it's horrific. And again, very much on brand. And they're not even getting to the paltry amount of people that they said that they were going to let pass through each day. By the way, the UN estimates
one day it was 5 people they let leave.
The UN estimates that roughly 18,000 people need to be evacuated from Gaza immediately for emergency medical treatment, including 4,000 children and 4,000 cancer patients. How the hell are you going to do that when you're only letting, at tops, 150 people out a day? But you're never going to make it to that number. And so people are, again, and this does not make it into the official count of people murdered by Israel, but people are being murdered by Israel simply because they can't access efficient medical care, because Israel has destroyed their ability to, take care of people in hospitals and things like that.
And on the topic of Israel, there will be another flotilla. They are not done, despite being attacked, arrested, tortured for days, where they were essentially given no water, which it only takes a few days of no water before you're at risk of death. They're going again, the flotilla to Gaza.
March 29th. And their goal, as they point out in their press release, excuse me, and y'all can find out more information if you go to Global Sumud, that's SUMUD, flotilla.org. You can also get involved. Please understand the risk, obviously, as Lee just pointed out. Carrying more than 1,000 healthcare professionals and stocked with life-saving medicines and equipment, this fleet aims to stabilize Gaza's healthcare system and support the efforts of local medical teams who have endured 2 years of genocide. And I think I like the way that they've framed this, because I think it's important to note, as a friend of mine who's a doctor in Gaza pointed out, the doctors in Gaza are like the best doctors in the world because they've been able to save people with basically like a Q-tip and a razor for 2 years, right? Like with nothing, with access to nothing, you know, giving people Tylenol for amputated legs. Like they have been able to work magic. So this is not to say that, oh, the medical professionals in Gaza can't do it. No, they can. They lack the supplies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the point is to try and again, like Israel's not allowing medical supplies in. You might like a visiting doctor might be allowed one prosthetic in a doctor kit if he's allowed or she is allowed into Gaza. They need thousands of prosthetics, right? It's the largest concentration of amputees in the world. And so the issue is not that the doctors can't do it. The issue is that the doctors don't have what they need. So I just wanted to make sure that that framing is understood. And I think they make a good point of saying it that way in the flotilla press release.
And not enough has been made. I mean, there's been almost zero mainstream coverage of the fact that multiple people in the flotilla, when Israel quote unquote arrested them, were sexually assaulted, were tortured, were in prison, were not allowed to see their the representatives of their country, you know, where their ambassadors, etc., which is supposed to be all of this is violating international law, but it didn't matter to Israel.
Also, somebody was just asking, is there a way to help Gazans? So there are many ways of doing that. You obviously want to make sure that you're checking where that money is going to, but I can just say that one of the things that I do, one of my small contributions is I have a website called artfromgaza.com, which is all art done by artists currently in Gaza. And you can buy prints off of there. And then all of the money goes to those artists in Gaza. So if you can type that in, artfromgaza.com.
Artfromgaza.com.
Yeah. And again, there are a lot of efforts that that also get money and and what aid's available to folks in Gaza. Just make sure you do your due diligence.
So the dock workers are continuing to fight against the ongoing war and death and destruction perpetrated by Israel and the U.S. In a pretty impressive way.
Yeah, so dock workers announced actually today that they announced it a while back, but they announced that they were going on a strike today. Over 20 ports along the Mediterranean were going on strike today, and the Palestinian People's Embargo for Palestine announced this morning that Italian dock workers have said that two shipping giants responsible for carrying military cargo to Israel changed course and delayed their ships out of fear of the strike's pressure. 4 vessel lines rescheduled their routes and docking times in order to avoid the workers' strike. So this is great. This is a really powerful display of what's possible when there's this kind of coordinated organizing, and this is awesome. The People's Dispatch also reports that they've been doing this organizing since 2023. And just a little side note, like this is the kind of time it takes to organize something this big. These are over 20 ports across the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
So I just real quick, slight tangent, but not really. When people talk about a general strike in the US, like, oh, let's do a general strike. Like, do you realize the amount of organizing it would take to make that happen across a country this large that includes that many people that are that close to destitution? If they're being asked to go on strike, we have to make sure that their basic needs are met. How many communities across the country have the ability? And I'm not trying to like throw shade because it's like the communities I'm a part of don't have this ability either, right? To take care of thousands of people who go on strike as part of this effort. Like there is a dearth of organizing and there's a lot of dreaming that happens, but like the actual footwork of making that happen, as opposed to just going out on a march or a parade, as I like to call it, calling for a general strike, that's not organizing. Okay. And so this kind of organizing where you get 20 plus ports, like these are massive ports that deal with cargo that goes all across the world. This is a huge organizing endeavor. And if we want to replicate something on this scale for whatever it is that our demands are, we have to get serious about addressing those needs so that we can make this happen in a coordinated way that's realistic.
Well said. Well said. Is there more on the ports, or should I
carry on?
Go to the next?
Carry on.
I wanted to show this while we're on the topic of Israel. Asselrod wrote, "Nothing to see here, just a UN official telling you Israel is blocking 10,000 trucks worth of desperately needed aid from Gaza." 10,000. And that's coming from the UN. And that's a point we've been making, which is just because there is less bombing now, a killing at a slower rate now than prior to the so-called ceasefire, does not mean it's not going on, does not mean this isn't ethnic cleansing, does not mean it's not a genocide. And Israel's not letting the vast majority of these aid trucks in. So people still don't have what they need. And it's barely a story. It's like a non-story that Israel continues to genocide the less than 50% of Gaza where all of the surviving people are. Just incredible for that not to be a story almost at all.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
And let's see, is that all I have on Israel? Oh, no, I had one more thing. Biden officials admitting that...
This is like the second time that they've
admitted. Yeah, no, it's more than one. Has admitted that they were violating international law and by facilitating this genocide, by helping Israel. And he's doing it as like a brag. He's trying to talk... This is Phil Gordon, who's the former Biden White House assistant to the president and national security advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris. And he's like responding to people saying that that the Biden administration held up weapons and wouldn't give them to Israel. And so he's saying, hard to overstate the damage to U.S.-Israel relations done by the sense of entitlement and ingratitude reflected in comments like these. And Netanyahu's own recent statements, baseless misdirection to suggest the Israeli soldiers' death in Gaza were caused by some phantom U.S. embargo. He says, when in fact, Biden resisted enormous pressure to condition aid to Israel as required by U.S. law, even as Israel rebuffed calls to facilitate more humanitarian assistance and reduce civilian casualties. So he's bragging about the fact that there was no embargo, that they didn't do anything. And Dropsite News points this out as well. They continued to fund Israel's genocide as they were violating international law. I mean, as the U.S. was violating international law and our own domestic laws, which say that the U.S. cannot send aid to a country that is blocking aid to another country. Like, again, they're bragging about their crimes. This is not just the Trump administration bragging about their crimes, but also the former Biden administration. All right. In our great rush to try and get all these topics in here. Let's see. Next, we're moving on to some ICE information. And I'm going to bring you some more Epstein revelations at around the half hour. So for those of you who joined late,
this is straight out of V for Vendetta. I don't know if any of y'all have seen V for Vendetta, where like there's this whole,
I'm sure they have,
kind of like side story about a woman who's imprisoned and is like writing her life story on a piece of toilet paper. That then Natalie Portman finds. This is people who are imprisoned in a concentration camp throwing notes that are like rubber banded to lotion bottles to organizers that are standing outside this facility. This is a facility in San Diego. And the message, I don't know if you can show it on the screen. The message.
This is the little shampoo bottle that it's been taped to.
It's cold here all the time and the food is poor. For 280 days, we haven't eaten a single piece of fruit, banana, apple, orange, or anything fresh. We are all in one big room with no doors or windows. We can't see any grass or trees. We are all constantly sick. And it continues to detail how remarkably horrific this is. So it's hard to like even understand like how fucking horrific this is.
This is in the freest country in the world, by the way. Freest country.
No doors or windows, no access to fresh food. You're just all piled in there. And people are obviously constantly sick. There's been a measles outbreak in one detention center in Texas, because duh. And this detention center is in San Diego. Organizers outside of this detention center have been have been showing up every day to try to communicate like through loudspeakers to the folks on the inside, not just to try to get them messages, but to try to let them know that that they're not alone.
That they're not alone. Let them know they have rights that they might not know they had.
Well, I don't know how much that means when you're in a concentration camp.
Well, no, it doesn't mean that much, but sometimes they may be told by an ICE agent, you have to answer these questions. And if they've learned that they do not have to answer the questions, it can make them behave differently.
And they're the people who have been holding this holding the space outside the concentration camp have been urging their elected officials to make an unannounced visit, which is something that legally elected officials have the right to make an unannounced visit to these concentration camps, but they never do it. They always do this announced visit when ICE has a chance to like clean shit up and
give people food.
Right. Or just hide people, So this is grotesque. And this is also reporting that you'll never see in corporate media. This is like, how is this not front page news of like the New York Times? I mean, I know the answer to that because it's a piece of paper that's only useful for wiping your ass. But like, this is the kind of information we are literally running a V for Vendetta, like a shittier version of the V for Vendetta movie is like the reality that we're living in right now. And corporate media could not give two shits.
And this story, well, we're pointing to V for Vendetta, but this story obviously was common during the Holocaust,
right.
Was slipping notes to prisoners on toilet paper or on whatever scrap you could find, trying to get messages out to family. Like, we're recreating the Nazi death camps and going, oh, well, this is what we need for our freedom in this country. Yeah. How you're the bad guys? And speaking of ICE, they're basically using the lynching and Jim Crow playbook on activists.
Yeah, this is a post that the International Policy, sorry, not the International Policy Institute, the Institute for Policy Studies. There's like a lot of institutes that have like, okay, acronyms are not my friend.
The Institute for Hair Removal actually has been doing some really impressive stuff on ICE.
Okay, well, they should have to. ICE agents should have to have every single hair on their body plucked by rusty tweezers by somebody with Parkinson's. Okay. So this post does a really good job of comparing what ICE agents are doing to lynchings in the United States. And I think that this is important because, and I'm guilty of this too, a lot of people will say like, oh, ICE is the Gestapo and stuff like that, which accurate. But also, I think we need to make sure that we circle this back to the United States, because this is a very American, it's an American like pastime, right? To be this horrific. And we can't just always say like, oh, that's some strange, creepy shit that came to us. No. This is
baked apple pie,
which is German.
Baked in like apple pie,
which is still German. Anyway, so lynching.
That's because immigrants, you know why it's German? It's because immigrants founded this country. I mean, stole this country, but then founded this country.
Yeah.
Also, we found this country.
And then genocided and enslaved a bunch of people. And then that's like,
we found this country. They weren't using it.
And then, and then that brings us to today, right? Very brief history of the United States. So after the Civil War, masked men, a la ICE, would regularly kidnap people who defied white supremacy, brutally murdering them in public, celebrating their extrajudicial executions as a moral victory, and then lied about what the victims had actually done. So this playbook that you saw happen with Renee Good and Preddy, like this is straight out of the lynchings, right? Public executions by masked men, then celebrated, then lied about, right? This is a playbook that has been on repeat in the United States for hundreds of years, right? And I think, again, it's important to note that. And as like kind of a connection here, I like that like, yes, most of the people who were lynched obviously were not white, but there have been a lot of white people who have been quote unquote race traitors who have found themselves on the receiving end of violence and even death because they're going against the white supremacist system. For instance, Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner, they were murdered along with their Black comrade, James Chaney, who were civil rights workers. I mean, John Brown, obviously, he's like a famous one. Seminary student Jonathan Daniels was jailed in Alabama after he helped African Americans register to vote. Shortly after being freed, he was shot and murdered. Viola Luzo, 39, was killed by KKK members while driving her car on a stretch of road between Selma and Montgomery. She was a wife and mother of 5 children. She was white. So these are just some examples, right? Like that again, like we look at history and we see the echoes of Renee Good and like it's new to us, right? But if we look at US history, it's not new to the US. This has always been the case. And this is not to say that like, oh, white people have it so hard. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that like, this is also something that I've been seeing that like, oh my gosh, now they're coming after white people. Now it's really scary. It's like, dude, they've always gone after white people who have gone against that white supremacist structure and framework. It's just that we haven't heard about it, right? Like how many of us as white kids learned about John Brown or about these folks when we were in school? No, you didn't, because they don't want to let you know that you can be a race traitor. That's not what they're going to teach you in school in civics class, right? Yeah. They're not going to tell you that. So it's really important to not only connect these killings of, I mean, anybody that ICE murders, including in particular the non-white folks, to lynchings, but also recognize that at that point, when you are showing up, and Renee Good, by the way, was just a legal observer, but when you're showing up, even just in a physical space that speaks to the dissent against the white supremacist police state, you are at risk, right? And also, that should not stop us from showing up, because as hold on, I had this somewhere. As Che Guevara said, I have seen the graves of those who did not fight, fearing that they would die. I am not trying to be hyperbolic here, but it's like, this is, again, baked into the DNA of this nation. And shit is getting real in a lot of places, in a lot of our communities. And a lot of people are understandably afraid of showing up. But I think it's really important that we recognize that not showing up will not keep you safe. And as Crime Think wrote a piece I think that folks should check out, it's safer at the front. A lot of times it's safer being at that vanguard with comrades, with your community members, showing up in the fight on a regular basis, because that's what builds these security networks. That's what keeps us safe. We keep us safe. And it doesn't mean that no one's going to get hurt. But we might be past the time where we can all just be like, oh, no one's going to get hurt and it's going to be okay and I can go back to sleep.
And so, you have to think about the famous quote, which has been altered a million times, so I'm not quoting it directly, but first they came for in this case, the immigrants, and I didn't say anything because I wasn't an immigrant. Then they came for the black folks. I didn't say anything because I wasn't black. And then they came for me, and there was no one to say anything left. This is very much that type of situation where it's like, if you're not going to stand up now, then there's going to be no one to stand up for you. So we all need to fight against this.
And there are a lot of roles to be played. So I think that's all I got.
Okay. Eleanor does have to run. I'm going to bring you more. I'm going to get into some more Epstein revelations that I did not get to on the last episode. That's coming up right now. I am going to shut off the camera for just 30 seconds while we switch the chairs. It's going to bang into things. It's the whole thing. And,
I'd like to take a survey.
Just say,
who likes
all
the
right.
scoot?
Yeah, muting.
Scoot?
I'll be back in 30 seconds. All right, I'm back. I told you it'd be 30 seconds. That was not a big deal, right? That was painless. Okay, let's get to there's so much to get to, but let's get to new Epstein revelations because I do not want to run out of time at 3:45 East Coast time, so 45 on the hour. I am going to start playing for you the new episode of Unredacted tonight because I also have to run. But for those of you who have not seen it, hopefully you will enjoy the new episode of Unredacted tonight, where I cover geopolitics and what the one word is that can't be spoken. I cover the West Bank in Israel, and I cover what's actually happening in Iran. All of that is coming up. But let's do some more Epstein revelations, shall we? So this is the column I just put up on Substack. I'm not going to go through this. I know some of you already read it. It is one of my most popular Substack columns I've put up ever. And it just came out yesterday. It's titled "The Biggest Epstein Revelation Goes Unsaid." You can go check that out. It's a very short column. I think you'll appreciate it. That's at reallycamp.substack.com. So go check that out when you get a second. reallycamp.substack.com. But I want to cover some of the other revelations because there are a lot. So let's get into more connections with Mossad have been revealed. We've already covered a lot of the connections to Mossad. Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had endless connections to Mossad. Ghislaine Maxwell's father was just about as high in the Israeli secret government as you can get. He was given the equivalent of a royal funeral in Israel when he died mysteriously on his yacht. But anyway, this is about what has been revealed with Steve Bannon and former Steve Bannon associate who has alleged he was a conduit for Epstein and Israeli influence in the White House. The recently released Epstein files contain a transcript of an FBI interview with Charles C. Johnson, a controversial right-wing blogger and former associate of Steve Bannon, who alleged that Bannon was a conduit for Epstein and the Israel lobby when he was the chief White House strategist and after his firing in 2017. There's also an email that came out of Steve Bannon saying to Epstein that Trump is controlled by Sheldon Adelson. Sheldon Adelson, as you guys know, was the largest donor to Donald Trump in the first round. Then he died. Sheldon Adelson, not Trump, unfortunately. And now his wife is one of the largest donors to Trump and controls Trump's Israel policy in many ways. But Sheldon Adelson, the billionaire creator of, or whatever, owner of the Sands casinos. And if you want a connection to media, see, you connect the dots. It's pretty easy to connect all these dots. But Sheldon Adelson also founded and leads, or when he was alive, led the largest or most read newspaper in Israel. I believe it's called Hayom, which it's a free newspaper, but that means that it was handed out at every subway station and was read by more people in Israel than any other newspaper. So this guy and his family, Miriam Adelson is his wife, who still does it. This guy who controls the White House, at least on Israel policy, and is one of the biggest donors and therefore controls the Trump presidency in many regards, is also one of the biggest media owners in Israel. So anyway, according to Charles C. Johnson's allegations, Steve Bannon was close to the Zionist Organization of America, ZOA, and Zionist donor Sheldon Adelson, and would leak information to the press to further their goals in coordination with Arthur Schwartz, a Trump-connected Republican operative who is allegedly an Israeli activist and public relations expert and maybe an Israeli intelligence source. And I just want to remind everyone, because I always feel the need to remind everyone that Zionist does not equal Jewish. I am Jewish and atheist, kind of both. And I'm not Zionist. You can be anti-Zionist and Jewish. There's millions of us. Also, you can be Christian and Zionist, as is Donald Trump, Joe Biden, so many others. Johnson further alleged that Steve Bannon was getting paid by Jeffrey Epstein with money from Israel and raised the possibility that Bannon even used Israeli technology to get information out of the White House. Johnson expressed concern that Epstein was an Israeli spy. He and Bannon may have had a business relationship, and Epstein paid Bannon with money from the Israelis. Johnson referenced a news story about Israel and Stingray equipment. That's a type of spying equipment that was found around the White House. Now he's associating it to Bannon. When that story dropped that the Stingray equipment was around the White House, which came out in 2019, there was no connection to Bannon in those articles. However, there was connections to Israel. The U.S. government, is from Politico 2019, the U.S. government concluded within the past 2 years that Israel was most likely behind the placement of cell phone surveillance devices that were found near the White House and other sensitive locations around Washington, according to 3 former senior U.S. officials with knowledge of the matter. So Israel was spying on the White House and also pressuring the White House to behave in certain ways, but also spying on the White House. Now, imagine if that were any other country. Imagine if it came out that any other fucking country had left spy equipment around and in the White House to spy on the president of the United States and the government. If it were a so-called enemy country that the U.S. hates, like Cuba or Iran or something, holy shit, that would be the cover of every fucking newspaper. However, and if it were an ally, if it were, you'd at least see some coverage of it. It'd be a pretty big story if France were putting spy equipment around the U.S. There'd probably be ramifications. The U.S. would probably make moves to do something that was harmful to France in order to show our anger. But with Israel, no, not a problem. Let's keep moving. Not an issue. Anyway, this is showing yet another connection to Mossad and to Israeli intelligence. This is not the first. We've covered others. I want to keep moving fast because I want to get to other revelations that have just come out. A new Epstein email has surfaced involving a Harvard professor, which reveals some pretty odd information. A newly surfaced email exchange from Epstein files shows an obscure message from Harvard University professor Martin Nowak, or Nowak, I don't know, to the late sex offender. And thank you, this outlet, for saying late sex offender. So often you look at mainstream media, they call him the financier. Yeah, is that his key attribute? Financier? Or is it fucking PDF file? How about that for his main attribute? Just, no, he's a financier. Nowak wrote an email dated 2014. So again, this is 6 years after Epstein was already found guilty of being a sexual predator. And the email said, "Our spy was captured after completing her mission. Epstein responded, 'Did you torture her?'" Now, I will say that I think, if I had to guess, it's probably not literal torture, but it probably is connected to some sex trafficking. It probably was a woman that Epstein had given to. This is, a guess. Again, I'm not saying this for absolute, but probably was a woman that Epstein gave to Nowak in some situation. I don't know whether that's payment. I don't know what it is. And they're joking about like the spy was captured, blah, blah, blah. I could be wrong. And maybe they literally meant torture. I don't know. But I also think this is an important story because this goes to show that there's a lot of people that were involved in this that should lose their jobs, that should lose their careers at minimum, that should probably be in prison if we had all the information. But because they're not really famous, because they're not the celebrities, because it's not the email from Elon Musk saying, "I want to come to your wildest party on the island," people don't talk about it. And it gets almost zero coverage. And this one's getting a little bit of coverage. But in 2014, Epstein's assistant, Leslie Groff, said, "Reminder, Martin Nowak is coming to the island." Nowak has not yet been accused of criminal wrongdoing, but Harvard University did place him on paid administrative leave in 2020 during an internal review. Nowak continues to be a professor of mathematics and biology at Harvard University. Isn't it amazing the shit you can be involved in and The worst that happens to you if you're a rich person is paid leave. It's just unbelievable. All right, let's keep plowing through some of the newer revelations. Here's another one that's not a famous person, but at least there's some ramifications. A top lawyer's fall shows growing fallout from the Epstein files. This is Brad Karp, and he's a powerful lawyer for powerful CEOs. The Epstein file has claimed its latest high-profile casualty, Brad Karp, for the law firm Paul Weiss. So he represents some of the top CEOs in the country. Karp's position has grown increasingly precarious after a highly contentious settlement with the Trump administration, a move that doesn't matter. But now is set to lead Paul Weiss, symbolizing a shift at the law firm. Justice Department's latest files related to the NFL team co-owner. I covered that the other day, but also Brad Karp. Karp resigned suddenly last night as a chairman of Paul Weiss, a major law firm. So there are some there continues to be fallout, but these people are not in prison. It's amazing how low our bar is for quote unquote punishment for these fucking parasites. Like, we're like, yeah, he lost his job, good. It's like, it's amazing how small, like, we're impressed with this. Just someone losing their job is just, oh, that's impressive. That doesn't normally happen. Let's see, let's keep moving. Oh, I want to play this video. This is the most bizarre video. This is a video that Steve Bannon took. The voice you're hearing interviewing Jeffrey Epstein is Steve Bannon. Steve motherfucking Bannon, former advisor to Trump, one of the biggest right-wing goons in the world, total fascist, gave a famous speech where he said you should be proud to be a racist, straight up white supremacist. And you ever notice that the white supremacists are like the least impressive specimens of white people? Like, he's just like, he's got skin falling off his face. He looks like he's going to keel over at any moment. He gets winded from a flight of stairs and he's like, the white race is the best ever. Anyway, let me play this 1 minute. Now, the reason Steve Bannon is questioning Epstein in a harsh way is because this didn't air anywhere. This was only intended to prep Epstein for an interview while Epstein was trying to rebrand himself as a good guy and a philanderer would have made more sense, but a philanthropist. And this is after Epstein had been in prison for, his little daycare prison or whatever it was called, for being convicted for sexual predation. And anyway, so basically, Bannon is trying to get him ready for tough questioning. So that's what this is.
Is your money dirty money?
If you live,
I just asked a question. Is your money dirty money?
No, it's not. So, in fact,
why is it not dirty money?
Because I earned it.
But you earned it.
I earned it legally.
We went back to this before. You earned
Yes.
it. You earned it advising the worst people in the world, right? That do enormous bad things, and just to make more money. You're a mathematician. We walked into that clinic where they're giving that money out to these people that are in the most dire straits of poverty and sickness, and told them that the money was coming from class 3 sexual predator?
Tier 1.
What's tier 1's the highest and worst?
No, I'm
the lowest.
I'm the lowest.
You're the lowest. Okay, tier 1, you're the lowest. But a criminal.
Yes.
That the money came from them. What percentage of people do you estimate? I understand you don't like probabilities. Do you estimate would say, I don't care, I want the money for my children?
I would say everyone said, I want the money for my children.
Did they know where the money came from?
If I told them,
if I told them
the devil,
100%.
the devil
himself
said, I'm going to exchange some dollars for your child's life.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question. Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Because you have all the attributes. You're incredibly smart. You remember the devil is somebody knows.
Smart?
The devil's brilliant. You read Milton's Paradise Lost.
No, the devil scares me.
bizarre interview of Steve Bannon pressuring Epstein in order to get him ready for an interview. Anyway, I wanted to play that for you. I'm going to bring you more and more of these revelations as they come out. But as I said, if you want the biggest Epstein revelation that literally like almost no one is talking about, then that's at my Substack, reallycamp.substack.com. And right now I'm going to play for you, because I do have to run, but I'm going to play for you the newest episode of Unredacted tonight right here. So if you haven't seen it, hopefully you'll stick around and enjoy that and enjoy the chat with everybody. I will see you Monday for another live stream. That's 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And here is the latest episode of Unredacted tonight. Coming up on tonight's show, the one word that even independent media seem incapable of saying. And unfortunately, it's the word that explains almost everything. No, it's not jambalaya, but you were close. Plus, Israel is not only ethnically cleansing Gaza. That's just one of the many ethnic cleansings that they're excited about. And finally, getting to the heart of what's really going on in Iran. No, it's not jambalaya. This time you weren't even close. All that and more coming up right now. Welcome to Unredacted tonight. I'm Lee Camp. One word is apparently still forbidden in all of media. Not just mainstream corporate news for people with blue hair who take selfies with one finger in front of the lens, but even the rogue indie wearing a t-shirt with a testosterone pill ad on it and doing a podcast out of Joe Rogan's shed in Austin, Texas. Even those guys still can't say this one word. They'll say all kinds of awful shit. They view it as a sign of bravery to say the N-word for no reason. They think they're cool for saying slurs to refer to people with mental illness. But there's one word they just can't say. Even the smart ones, they either don't understand it or are afraid, or I don't know what's going on. You know the word, right? Petrodollar. They can't say it. What? It's not that hard. Here's an example. A clip of Dave Smith on Theo Von's show. If you don't know Dave, he's a sometimes comedian, but he has also become kind of the global politics whisperer for the Joe Rogan sphere. You've heard of horse whisperers who can speak to horses by groaning and snorting and stuff, like that kind of thing. Dave Smith snorts and huffs and puffs, and apparently the Joe Rogan gang are able to understand that. And I don't hate Dave Smith. I used to know him years ago. He's smart on a lot of things, very good on Israel. He rightly calls Gaza a genocide, so that's awesome, and I'm here for it, which makes it all the more shocking when he's a moron. He endorsed Donald Trump rather than endorsing none of this nonsense.
How do you feel like Trump's done in his first year? Like, what are things he's done that you like?
Well,
and
I think he's been terrible. And I assumed he probably would be a disappointment. And I supported him last year just because I thought, like, all things being considered, it was better for our country that he win than Kamala Harris win. And also the Democrats just so deserve to lose. Like, you just can't reward that.
Yes, the Democrats deserved to lose. I totally agree. And so did Donald Trump. You can't reward the Dems, but you can reward whatever the that orange flesh sack is doing every single day of his pathetic, creepy existence. That's rewardable. How about not supporting either of them? I know this is shocking to people who have been completely brainwashed, but you don't have to be part of this dumpster fire. You can vote for third parties. You can support other things. You can spend your time organizing resistance rather than just talking about electoralism. Honestly, how dumb do you have to be to not know what Donald Trump is at the point of the last election? We already did 4 years of his bullshit. It would be like getting punched in the face 30 times and then endorsing punches to your face. Well, I think this next time, I think it's not gonna be that big a deal. It'll be different with the punches in the face. I think they'll be good next time. So I'm for the punches. Anyway, Dave Smith has seen some of the errors of his ways, but he still can't say that one really naughty word, the P word. Here he is trying his best to figure out why Donald Trump kidnapped Maduro and bombed Venezuela and, oh yeah, put the world on the brink of nuclear annihilation by doing it.
My best guess on this is that two things I think play huge influence in this. Number one, Donald Trump, who always seems to just see a deal. And that's all, like in his mind, he seems to think
here's an opportunity.
His military's telling him we can take this guy out and put our people in, and then I could get huge oil sales, and then I could turn around and say, look how good this economy is, and we win the midterm elections and whatever. And they've said this quiet part out loud a bunch of times. I don't know if this is true or not, but they think that the regime in Cuba will fall.
So he thinks Trump invaded Venezuela, killed 100 people, kidnapped Maduro, risked getting into a war with China, Russia, a bunch of others, just because he and his goons are hoping Cuba will fall and we'll get a really good mojito pipeline going to the U.S. And, oh yeah, to have some more oil to steal, even though the U.S. is already one of the top 5 oil exporters in the world. Sure, they want to collapse Cuba. Sure, they love stealing oil. But it's more than that. It's the petrodollar. The fact that most oil is sold around the world in U.S. dollars is one of the main reasons the dollar is the global reserve currency, which means the U.S. government can print all the dollars they want, and yet inflation doesn't run wild. Other countries can't do that. The U.S. can spend $1 trillion a year on military and still have money to make it rain on strippers. The U.S. can have an insane national debt and still be rich. Our debt, as of the writing of this show, is $38,460,239,716.76. I like that they keep the cents in there, like someone's really keeping track. But that number is actually wrong, because between the time I wrote this and the time you're hearing it, that debt increased by $71,750 per second. The U.S. is constantly increasing the amount of dollars in circulation, the monetary supply. It's over $22 trillion. They added 20% to the monetary supply the moment the pandemic started. The only way to print that much money and not be at risk of full financial collapse with a completely debased currency is the petrodollar, the main pillar of why the U.S. is the global reserve currency. Okay, so what does that have to do with Venezuela, the country with more oil than any other country? Venezuela was actively selling that oil in Chinese yuan, not dollars. In 2018, Venezuela announced it would free itself from the dollar. They started accepting yuan, euros, rubles, anything but dollars for oil. They were petitioning to join BRICS. They were building direct payment channels with China that bypassed SWIFT entirely. And they were sitting on enough oil to fund de-dollarization for decades. In the de-dollarization war, Venezuela was like the ultimate battleship. The U.S. desperately needed to take it out of the game. Unfortunately, Dave has, I guess, not figured this out yet. Neither has Joe Rogan. Neither has apparently 80% of indie media journalists or talking heads or yelling melons or bloviating bulbous faces or whatever you call them. And me. But I'm not bulbous, all right? It's the right size relative to my body. And of course, the mainstream corporate media idiots have definitely not figured this out. Or if they have, I assume they wake up to a horse head in their bed with a little note that says, don't mention the petrodollar.
That's all part of the plan.
Israel has been so busy genociding Gaza that pretty much everyone has forgotten there's a whole other place they're completely wiping off the map, the West Bank. Do you have any idea how awful a country you have to be for the world to forget one of the areas you're ethnically cleansing? That's f***ing crazy. In the West Bank, Israel has a different tactic for stealing all the land. Rather than bombing it, they are basically trying to make it unlivable. They're just trying to make it so hard to get by that everyone leaves and the settlers move in. And let's be clear, they aren't settlers. They don't settle anything. In fact, they are the opposite. They are instigators. They take areas where people were settled and they set them on fire. But yeah, let's call them settlers. And we'll call right-wing Stockholm Syndrome trad wives feminists. Instead, let's actually call them Israeli land thieves. I would call them land pirates, but everyone likes pirates now. Pirates used to be just stinky guys with black teeth and rickets. Now they're like a sexy young Orlando Bloom with guy liner. So I don't want Israeli land thieves to be viewed as a young, hip Johnny Depp. Last year saw an unprecedented number of attacks on Palestinians living in rural communities. At least 13 rural Palestinian communities in the West Bank were completely wiped off the map. This impacted at least 190 families and 1,090 individuals. And I'm not sure you understand how this system works. Israel wants all that land. The problem is people live there. So Israel has decided it doesn't look great to just go in with soldiers and just take it over and kill people like they did in Gaza. So instead, they send non-soldiers, usually often 16-year-olds or teenagers, to create havoc, set things on fire, kill sheep, and steal shit, destroy olive trees that are 1,000 years old, block the dirt roads with boulders, probably play Nicki Minaj at high volumes, anything to make life awful. And the American response is, if anyone were to do that to me, I would shoot them in the face. All right, that's what I'd do right there. Yeah, well, the Palestinians can't do anything because if they do, the Israeli military will come and kill them or arrest them and hold them hostage for, 20 years. So they basically have no recourse to having their lives destroyed. A new report has come out saying that between January and December 2025, Israeli settlers conducted 892 attacks on Palestinians, killing 14 people in the West Bank. Settler attacks also provoked 434 fires, 127 of which affected farmland, and 307 fires against other Palestinian properties. You might think, that's awful. Why don't the people just leave, though? They should get out of there. Well, for one, it's not like moving from one U.S. state to another. Most Palestinians don't have a lot of options or a lot of money. But more importantly, many of them are living on land that has been theirs for generations. I know Americans can't relate to this. Ask an American where they're from, and the answer is always, well, born outside Seattle, but then we moved to Texas when I was 2, and then at 7 we lived in 3 different states, mainly on the East Coast. I went to college in New Hampshire, lived for 3 years in Canada, and then came back to Cleveland. Well, Cleveland and Orlando, Florida, and Eagle Butte, Montana. But my grandparents came here from Poland and Scotland. You see, it's a different thing when the land you're on is part of your family. It's everything to you. The trees outside are your brothers. The hills saw you grow up. The olives sustained your family for 100 or more years. That's not an easy thing to just run away from. Nobody in the U.S. is like, leave here? What are you kidding? The 7-Eleven across the street helped raise my mother when she was a baby. I lost my virginity out back the Dollar Tree down the street. My great-grandfather worked for the neighborhood naughty bookstore in the early 1900s. I can no more leave the outskirts of Trenton, New Jersey than I can sell my own heart from my chest. But yes, The Israeli land thieves try to make life unpleasant and sometimes impossible. Many rural Palestinians make their living from olive trees. In 2025, 35,273 trees were destroyed and poisoned, including 26,988 olive trees in the area. But it's not just attacking their livelihoods. Sometimes the IDF legit just destroys their homes. This was coupled with a wave of demolitions by the Israeli army, which leveled 1,400 Palestinian structures that year, including 304 inhabited homes, 74 uninhabited houses, 4,900 farming structures, and 270 other livelihood structures. You see, Palestinians don't even really have anyone to complain to when Israeli land thieves wreak havoc. If they call the authorities, they're basically inviting a bear into their house to see if it'll help them out. Yeah, maybe it will. Who knows? In fact, most of the time, the settlers, land thieves, want the Palestinians to fight back because that gives them the reason they need to truly destroy everything. In August of last year, the Israeli army decided to punish a village after it accused a youth of throwing stones at Israeli forces. The punishment? Uprooting and destroying between 8,000 and 10,000 olive trees in the plain, essentially ending the village's olive production. The punishment for throwing a stone at your ethnic cleansers was to have your village's entire livelihood ruined. Essentially, settler violence is step one to stealing the land. Step two, after the family either flees or fights back, is for the IDF to come in and destroy the structures or the trees. At that point, the land is, quote, no longer occupied by anyone. So Israel goes, wow, look, that village we wanted to take is somehow empty and free to take. What luck. All of this is ramping up in what many call the second Nakba. 733 Palestinians injured by land thieves last year, doubling the number from the year before. Seeing as Israel has committed all-out, full-frontal, grade A genocide in Gaza and so far gotten away with it, they now figure that some relatively subtle ethnic cleansing in the West Bank is no big deal at all. Genocidal apartheid states don't just choose to start behaving themselves one day. They have to be stopped. As the U.S. manufactures consent for another imperial war, this time on Iran, I'm sure you've seen the headlines about the hundreds, nay, thousands, nay, tens of thousands, nay, millions of protesters that the Iranian government has killed. Here's a standard example from the New York Times. Iran killed thousands of protesters. According to human rights activists in Iran, a Washington-based organization, more than 6,200 people were killed, most of them protesters. 6,200! Good God, man! Now, let's ignore the fact that Mossad has admitted publicly that they're on the ground with the protesters. Let's ignore the fact that the U.S. has admitted creating these protests using economic sanctions, i.e. economic war. And let's ignore the fact that none of these news outlets seem nearly as concerned about the genocide that continues in Gaza. Let's instead ask a rather simple question. Tell me again where the 6,200 dead number came from. Oh, an organization called Human Rights Activists in Iran. Well, that must be legit. It's human rights activists inside Iran. They've got to know more than us. Way over here in the United States, they're in Iran. Excuse me. Where in Iran again? Oh, yes. Washington, D.C., Iran. Yep, Washington, D.C., Iran. It's a wonderful city, honestly. It's a really unique culture there. The slow-cooked saffron chicken kebabs they sell outside the Lincoln Memorial are to just die for. That's right. This is an organization called Human Rights Activists in Iran, and it's based in Washington, D.C. So they lie to you in their name. They couldn't make it past the name without being full of bullshit. I think that's a red flag. So who exactly are the activists in this organization? Human rights activists in Iran is bankrolled by the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, through its cutout organization, the National Endowment for Democracy, NED. Established in 2006, Human Rights Activists in Iran is based in Fairfax, Virginia, basically Washington, D.C., just a stone's throw away from CIA headquarters in Langley. Oh, it's a good old CIA. And they put it next door to CIA headquarters for an easy commute. You know, that's the worst when you're trying to manufacture fake revolutions and you have to walk several blocks, So just put them next door to each other. So gosh, who wouldn't believe the numbers that organization is spitting out? But hold on. Stop getting carried away. That's not the only organization pumping out these numbers of thousands of dead protesters. Here's from NPR. The death toll from ongoing protests in Iran has surpassed 6,000, according to the U.S.-based human rights activist news agency. 6,000, there you go, proof. Here's from the Washington Post. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency said that 6,221 dead included at least 5,858 protesters. Ha! Told you. So this is a different group than the CIA, NED-funded human rights activists in Iran, and they too say over 6,000 been killed. Ha ha! Are you ready to give up and admit Iran has killed 6,000 protesters? So who is this group again? Human rights activists in Iran and its media arm, the Human Rights Activists News Agency, have become the go-to groups of experts for Western media. Oh, it's just the same CIA group we already talked about, except they added news agency this time. This is like their blog. And if you think I or Mint Press are making up that they're funded by the NED, an admitted CIA cutout, you can just read their website. It says, because the organization seeks to remain independent, it doesn't accept financial aid from neither political groups nor governments. We'll ignore the grammatical errors for the moment. HRAI has also been accepting donations from the National Endowment for Democracy, NED. We're an independent, unbiased group funded by the CIA. Wink. But let's do one more. The Center for Human Rights in Iran, which has also been quoted widely by the mainstream corporate pro-war outlets. The CHRI has been the source of many of the goriest and most lurid stories coming out of Iran. There you go. Happy? An Iranian organization in Iran that is not funded by the CIA verifies all the thousands of protesters murdered. The CHRI, an Iranian human rights group based in New York City and Washington, D.C., was identified by the government of China as directly funded by the NED. Well, okay, but that's China. They always lie. They're always lying. There's more. CHRI board member Morangas Carr is a former Reagan Facile Democracy Fellow at the NED. And in 2002, at a star-studded gala on Capitol Hill, First Lady Laura Bush and future President Joe Biden presented Carr with the NED's annual Democracy Award. Gotcha. So, more CIA shit. Okay, got it. Good. That's awesome. Look, I'm not saying the Iranian government hasn't killed any protesters, but I am saying the U.S. destroyed the economy of Iran, helped create the protests, funded and armed protesters, then put out fake numbers from CIA-backed orgs saying 1 billion protesters were killed. Now the U.S. wants to use those fake numbers to bomb Iran. Got it. Love it. I feel really good about this. What could go wrong? Smartest people in the world are running this whole show, so I think it'll go great. And here are your headlines from the future. Coming up in 1 week, we'll learn NOAA announces 2026 already a verifiable shitstorm. Finally, Trump letting a federal agency actually tell the truth. And coming up in 3 weeks, we'll find out caring, empathetic Israeli feels pretty good about itself for only setting fire to Palestinian farmhouse, not dropping any drone bombs. You know, there's good people in every society. And coming up this July, we'll read scientists announce American household debt now so large it has its own gravitational pull. Oh, that explains why my dog keeps sticking to the filing cabinet. That's the show. We're off next week, but we have a new episode almost every Thursday. Do you feel this show is worth a beer a month? That's all it takes. Join up at realleecamp.substack.com and throw us the cost of a beer a month, or patreon.com/leecamp, and it will keep this show going. Thank you for the support. I also have live streams Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at youtube.com/moment of clarity. Until next time, the revolution will have laughter. Keep fighting.